Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tambayan, FiliFest's official podcast, a safe space where we discuss anything and everything Filipino. So today I am joined by three lovely ladies and Josh. So today I have Heather, Nicole, and Selena. So this year, all of us are part of your FiliFest committee. Um, so for those who may not know, August is actually Buwan Wika, which translates to the month of language. So throughout the month, we will try to explore the Filipino culture through the language, which is why I'm particularly happy that I have this group of people with me because I know that we all have some different experiences with the language. We all speak different languages. Some of us are, we have different levels of fluency. I know in particular you, Heather, couldn't speak it, you had to learn over the past few years. So do you want to share some of your experiences of that?
I'm American Filipino, but I was born and raised in London, in a Filipino community, in a Filipino home, but the language was never passed down to me. So I didn't understand Tagalog growing up. My family also speaks Ilokano. So over the past 2 years or so, I started going to the Philippines more, and I realized if I really want to connect, I think I should learn the language. And so it's been a learning process for me. I haven't had any formal, we learn languages at school, and it's not the same when it's a mother tongue spoken at home. I haven't learned the grammatical foundations that I would want, but that's necessary really for me understanding Tagalog from a learning perspective. But yeah, that's my experience. So I'm not 100% fluent yet, but I'm getting there, and it's been a way for me to really connect more with the culture.
So are you one of those people now who can listen along the teleseries and like the
Oh
TFC shows,
yeah,
the dramas?
yeah, ngayon na kailanman, forevermore. Like I watch those for educational purposes, but
Hmm.
kilig, like I also watch it for that.
Cool. I know then you, Nicole, are sort of on the opposite end of the spectrum where you grew up with the language. I know you speak Chavacano, which actually before meeting you, I had never even heard of. So yeah, do you want to open up with some
Yeah.
of your experiences?
So my experience is completely opposite to Heather's. I grew up in the Philippines for 17 years, and so I'm fluent in Tagalog, English, and Chavacano. Chavacano being my mother language and the lingua franca of my city. So I grew up learning it. It's spoken at home the most, especially with my parents and all of my relatives. None of my family members back home are very fluent in Tagalog or English. So it's always been Chavacano in our household. As for Tagalog and English, I was exposed to it at a very young age because of media, and also because my relatives knew I had to learn both languages. But I don't really have an intimate relationship with Tagalog as a language because I don't really have any opportunity to speak it. English, on the other hand, it's the most convenient and I'm most like comfortable speaking it. And I learned both in school, so yeah.
See, for me, that's so different because I grew up, the part of the Philippines where I'm from, Batangas, we only speak Tagalog. So I grew up assuming everyone else would be speaking it. So I think meeting people, I know there's a lot of Ilocanos, you know, strewn around London. And I know like, it's like, not everyone can speak Tagalog. And it's like this mainstream idea that Tagalog is like the language of the Philippines is astounding. Like, considering the fact that we have so many languages that we speak as well.
Yeah.
Selena, I know you now, similar story to Nicole and myself, but you were a bit younger when you moved to London. So was the experience different for you?
Yeah, I mean, I was practically a baby when I first came here. I was 5 years old, but I did have schooling. I did go to elementary school in the Philippines in Manila. My parents speak Ilocano predominantly, but where they grew up, it was kind of like a melting pot. So you had Kapampangan, you had Ilocano, you had Pangalotok, but we speak mostly Ilocano. And like growing up here, they taught us how to speak English because it was necessary, It's not like people here would understand me if I spoke Tagalog all the time or like Ilocano. So because of that, it's kind of been erased a little bit. I do understand Ilocano though. I am really comfortable listening to my parents. They think I can't understand it, but when they're chatting rubbish about me, I can hear every single word and understand everything they're saying. But yeah, it's been a weird experience, like coming here as a child. But like Heather, I am trying to learn it. There is a lag though. That's the only thing. The lag with my language is, people be speaking at me and I can understand them, but I'll stare at them for ages trying to pick out the words that I want to say. It's a bit difficult, but I'm getting there.
So is it then the situation for you at home is your parents would be speaking at you and your siblings in Ilokano, and then you would be responding to them in English?
Pretty much, yeah. It's like a mixture of Ilocano, Tagalog, and English. So Iloka Tagaglish or something. I personally feel kind of out of my depth whenever I try to speak Ilocano or Tagalog to them because I'm so used to just speaking English for convenience. But when I am put in situations where I have to, so like family gatherings, obviously going to the Philippines, then that's the opportunity where I can just shine. I can like shine, try my Ilocano a little bit, basit laan. So yeah. My brother and sister, though, on the other hand, can't speak Tagalog or Ilocano. I know they struggle sometimes, and I'm kind of like their translator whenever we go back home.
Josh, then I know me and you both moved to this country at sort of the same age. So I'm sure our fluency levels are very similar. And I think we both speak Tagalog, but you also speak Bicolano, right? So
Bicol.
how's,
But
yeah, how
fair
can
enough,
you,
same.
sorry.
Actually, I was actually like raised speaking English. Like even when I was growing up in elementary school, I'd get made fun of just speaking English. Um, I only recently upgraded my fluency like in secondary school because the same with Selena, I'd have to think every time I went back to the Philippines, they'd speak to me in Tagalog and Bicol, and I'd have to think of what to say. But so I just learned and just watched videos. I did Duolingo for a bit. Well, the equivalent of Duolingo back then. But yeah, I'd say that my fluency is up to your level. Same with, but like in terms of Bicol, um, I can speak it, but it's still like there's still some cognitive dissonance with it. So I still have to think of what I'm saying because in Bicol we have not just one language. It depends on which area you're from. So like, say for if you're in Legazpi, I can't understand them because they speak a different dialect of Bicol. I'm from the south, so we have a more Bisaya influence. But yeah, that's just been my experience basically.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, I didn't know. I think this was probably one of the first times I've heard of someone who grew up in the Philippines but was raised in English in a non like half foreign, half Filipino household. So was it like you guys would speak English in the house primarily? Is that what you were trying to
Yeah,
say?
yeah, we always speak English in the house. That's probably why we're like more comfortable with speaking English. Like I know my sister can speak it, but my brother and my two younger brothers, I think it's just English for them. I don't they can understand Tagalog, like some phrases, like conversationally, but like when you speak Bicol, like whenever my mom and dad speak to each other in Bicol, like no, nothing.
We're kind of similar in that sense, then, Josh. We both experienced an English household.
Hmm.
But of course, you were in Philippines and I was here, so that's really interesting.
I did move here when I was 7. So my parents thought that if I, just because I went to elementary school, that I'd like learn Tagalog fluently, but it's been a learning process with me, and I think I'm better at it. Like I can speak it. Like even even at work, like some of the nurses will be like, "Oh, you have an accent, so you probably don't know how to speak it," and I'll just talk back, be like, "Marunong ako."
It's my
Wow,
favorite phrase.
impressive. That happened to me at work, but I wasn't like you.
Oh, how are they at work?
Like, oh my god, I had a nosebleed. Like nosebleed. Oh my god! And she was like, "Oh, you're Filipino." And then we had another Filipino co-worker who grew up here as well, and we kind of just looked at each other like, so which one of us is gonna talk to her in Tagalog or try? So I tried, but the lag. It's always the lag that gets me.
That's really funny because you guys are talking about the lag. It's the opposite for me with English. Because when I first moved here, even though I can speak English, it's like all of these different accents. I'm like, I'm staring at their mouths very, very rudely because I can't understand people. I'm like, sorry, can you repeat that again? I really can't understand you. And I'm like, it took a while for me to get the hang of it. But yeah, even with like people at home, when I started speaking British with a British accent, they're all like, "Oh, siguro hindi ka na marunong magsalita ng Tagalog, no?" I'm like, "Yeah, I can still speak Tagalog and Chavacano, like, please." But yeah, there's always that kind of thing that they, I don't know.
But then again, it's I don't know if it's just me, but I don't think it would be surprising if people who have the British accent can't speak Tagalog, because there's this thing that I've noticed that Filipino kids who are born in the UK tend to not speak or know how to speak Tagalog. I'm not gonna like probably 90% of my friends who were born here can't speak it. But then you look at, say, Vietnamese kids, Vietnamese born, no, UK born Vietnamese kids, they can still speak the language. Same with Chinese, Indian. So there's that sort of disparity almost that Filipino kids maybe aren't getting taught the language at home, and parents are forced to speak English rather than their own mother tongue. So I think that's always been quite interesting for me, at least. Like everyone might just be bored as hell now, but for me, it's something that I've picked up on definitely. So it's yeah, because even they find it quite weird when I'll go to their house. I'll be speaking in British accent English, and then when an auntie speaks to me, I will switch my accent straight. You wouldn't even be able to tell that I that I live in Britain now. Like the accent is that bad. I think yeah. So I think I'm really enjoying this discussion. I think it really highlights why Buwan and Wika is important. Because like even us, five of us, Filipino, but our experiences with languages and the Filipino language is so vastly different. And I think that, but there's also some commonality, some sense of community that that ties us all together. So I think that's something that's very very good with the language.
I think, like, to hop on as to why not a lot of Filipino kids that were born here speaking Tagalog or any other, one of our native languages. I think it has to do with the fact that there's still this mentality that English is like the language to teach your kids to succeed. Because I don't know if my parents planned to like move here when I was younger, but they just spoke to me in English, and I just reciprocated it. I think that's still like a common
Yeah.
mentality even today, I feel.
Yeah. It's the same with me as well. When I was younger, my mum and dad bought me phonetics books. I don't know if you guys know what that is, but it's basically how to pronounce words. So my Filipino accent, my Taglish, was completely removed because of those phonetic books. Because I'd come home after school and have to read, "This is how you say shark. It's not shark." Things like that.
In primary school, there was this word. I think, like it was in a book, and I asked my teacher, "What is roge?" But my teacher was like, "Rogue," because you know how in Tagalog it's ue is pronounced well, a letter then ue is like ge.
My mom and dad would pronounce bathrobe as batrob. So me and my friend in primary school were talking about like the bathrobes that we have. Well, I was like, she's like, "Oh, I have this pink bathrobe." I'm like, "Yeah, I have a Hello Kitty bathrobe." she, she was like, "You have a Hello Kitty bathroom?" "No, a bathrobe. I have a Hello Kitty bathrobe." And she just had no clue what I was saying. She kind of just like, okay, looking at me like I'm a liar. Like, no, I do have a Hello Kitty bathrobe, okay? Oh my god, the accent.
Iconic.
I'm gonna
Absolutely
I
iconic.
I can one up your stories, both of yours. I think this is very vivid to me. I think it must have been like my third week in London. So I was in year four. We were reading out countries of the world, and I got the country Niger. Um, and my minimal English, very Tagalog freshy self said it in a way that was very close to another problematic word,
You're cancelled.
and
After
and I didn't mean it, and the whole class sort of turned and was like,
oh
"What?" And the teacher was like, "It's fine. He's new. He doesn't mean it." And I was like, "What happened? What happened?" And to this day, that is one of my like, looking back, one of my worst moments.
no! You win, Reg. You win.
I hate it.
Mate, you should have borrowed my phonetics book.
I should have. Even thinking back now. So, this brings me to my favorite section of the podcast, where I invite one of my beautiful guests to tell me a fact and see if it can shock me. So I think today we have a fact from Josh. We'll see if he prepared.
Talaga? Okay. Did you know that the word Tagalog is actually derivative of the native way of saying Taga-ilog to reference Manila, to where Manila is. And then the Spanish couldn't say
Oh,
it,
like the.
so they pronounced it Tagalog. Ta-da!
What's
Okay,
Tagalog?
that deserves a talaga. Taga-ilog means from the river.
Talaga?
Yeah,
Well, that's Taga.
Oh.
That's
to reference Manila,
Talaga moment.
because Manila is well by Pasig River, so that it
Mm,
wasn't named Pasig back then. So they decided to call it Taga-ilog.
talaga.
The more you know. Talaga.
That's
Talaga
a
na talaga.
that's a genuine talaga moment. It's like, oh, I was expecting my standards were like here, but gladly
Wow.
you went through the roof. Proud of you.
To be honest, I want to expand more on the different, since we have a lot of people here from like all over the Philippines, like the differences. Because I know, Ranch, like even though you speak Tagalog, it's like a different type of Tagalog. Ala eh?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I heard that a lot in Batangas.
yeah. So Batangueño isn't a different language per se. It's more a dialect. I don't know the difference between the two, but I'm going to claim it as a dialect because it's not like a whole new language system. It just has different words, like different little things. So instead of saying anoba, we say anoga, and it just sounds like so much more aggressive. And like, I
That's so
kid you,
jugular.
yeah,
Anuga.
yeah, anoga. And I kid you
Anuga,
not,
bro. Like,
if you come talk to me after a holiday in the Philippines, my accent gets horrible. My dad is the worst because he would speak to like the construction workers, like he would speak to the tambays on the side of the road, and his accent will get so like street. It's like even when speaking to him at home, it's insane, insane.
Yeah, like even like personally when I speak Tagalog, apparently I have like a different accent. Like even when speaking it, it's a lot more like softer because that's basically how my dialect of Bicol is normally spoken. It's like softer, slower, sometimes aggressive, but like you could tell like I'm not a native Tagalog speaker.
your
Um,
voice is just soft, Josh.
I know,
Even in English.
I know. Thank you.
I definitely agree because when I speak English, I'm very soft spoken or like very polite. When it's Tagalog, it's very formal because like that's the only way I learned Tagalog, very formal. But when I speak Chavacano, it's very fast, it's very aggressive, very rude. So when I started speaking more English, I was very rude as an English speaker. I wouldn't say please. I wouldn't say thank you. I was like, can you pass me the ruler? And they were like, yeah, okay. And they were waiting for me to say please. I was like, can you pass me the ruler? And they were like, can you say please? I'm like, all right. But yeah, Chavacano as well, it's just like as a language, is very rude and very fast. So when I speak Chavacano, it's like it's like a machine gun coming out. But it's like blah, 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 blah. And so just like yeah. Also, fun fact, Chavacano is
Yeah.
actually mostly based in Spanish. So people say it's a broken Spanish, but it's not. So it's kind of very rude sometimes.
Can you teach us like a diss?
Sample,
Chavacano
sample.
diss?
Oh no, I'm not very good at cursing.
No, not curse, but just like like
We're a family-friendly
you know,
podcast.
yeah. Just thinking that like if I needed to stand my ground and I was in Chavacano land, I could be like,
Chavacano land?
In
or something like
Chavacano
cool
land.
story, bro.
Chavacano land.
Yeah,
Chavacano.
that's what I.
So instead of saying we don't have a word for hi, we just say hoy. Pasaman bo. So if you say bo, it's very rude. But if you say tú or ustedes, that's very polite. So we
Oh,
don't
so
have.
Spanish.
So like if I say ¿Qué tal man ustedes? That's very polite of me. But if I say ¿Qué tal man bo? It's like a tambay. It's like ¿Qué tal man bo?
Perfect for Tambayan.
That's like listening
Yeah,
to a new, like a whole new language. I would have never thought they spoke that in the Philippines.
it's different. Like I
Yeah.
wouldn't even know.
It's
Wild.
hear like my parents speak it, or like I have relatives who live in the mountains, very rural areas. They speak it like so well. Like I struggle going one sentence straight Chavacano because I'm like, yeah, I don't know the word like sentence in Chavacano. So if I try to explain what Chavacano is in Chavacano, I'd have to stop at the word sentence or some other phrases because I just don't know the words. I just switch to Tagalog or English, whichever is more like convenient for me.
Heather, I know as someone who learned the language like through your own perseverance, do you have an accent when you're speaking Tagalog? Do you have like a
You tell me, guys. Do I have a? Do I get a lot. Honestly, I think it might be the way I look, and that will influence how people assume I should be speaking. So actually, a lot of you guys are talking about how when you come here and you start speaking in British accents, they assume that you can't speak anymore. When I go home, when I go there, my family, if I say anything in Tagalog, even if I'm like, oh, salamat po, they're like, ayan, galing mo, ang Tagalog naman. And I'm like, oh man, you know what I mean? They make such a big deal out of it. And growing up, I hated that. I didn't want it to be such a big deal that my mother tongue had that reaction to it, which is why I think I didn't want to, or I don't know, I felt uncomfortable speaking to it with family. But even now, people will be like, you sound so like pansin when you're speaking Tagalog, you're so like konyo. And I'm like, am I though? Or is it just because I look foreign? Like, please. Um, but yeah, honestly, the accent is something I had to also learn because obviously I have an American accent. And when you speak in Tagalog, you need to, the way you pronounce T's and R's, that kind of stuff is part of learning the language. And I couldn't do it when I was younger. So obviously you're gonna sound very. Have you ever been in like a language class and a super British person will start speaking French and they're like, "Oh, je suis enfant," and you're like, "Oh man." Same. I was so worried about that. I was like, I don't want to sound like I can't speak Tagalog. I don't want to sound like an American speaking Tagalog. But here we are. I've learned the accent, and I think it's all right. You guys tell me.
sorry, you just unlocked like a secondary school memory from like British kids speaking like German and like in like foreign languages, and it's like suddenly got triggered. No, but for my family, it was the opposite. It was I'd go home and then they'd be like, Ranch, we'd be at Jollibee, order in English, see if they can understand you. It would be the exact opposite. So for me, with my family, I'm more reserved speaking in English. Like I don't like speaking it because it's like a wow, Ranch can speak English so good, and it's just like ooh, ooh. But maybe that's just me. I don't know if Selena or Josh or Nicole have that as well.
I have like a similar experience. Like this is like even happening now because I don't really look like 100% Filipino. So a lot of people at hospital, like the other Filipino nurses, I'm not a nurse, but when I come around, they're like, "Ang inchik, you know," and then I'm like, I can understand you, naiintindihan kita. Like, do you know what I mean? Even like during secondary school, a lot of the other Filipinos like they had to look at me, and then I'd be like, "Yeah,
Relates, Josh.
I know, relate."
Yeah, get that foreign look. People assume,
When I go home, like to the Philippines, I just get a lot of stares. Like, what is this Chinese tourist doing here? Do you know what I mean?
Relate. I relate so hard to you.
There was one time when I went to Bohol. Um, the guy in the ferry was like, "Ni hao," and I was like, "Mabuhay."
I was sitting in the park today, and these like kids walked past me, and they went "Annyeong." I was like, "Do I look Korean? Like, I haven't gotten that one before. Thanks."
Selena, what about your experiences?
In the same vein that Ranch's relatives asked him to like speak in English, my cousins will they're just so rude. My self-esteem can't take it. But what do you call it? Like, I remember I must have asked them, "Can I have the mineral water, please?" And for the whole trip, they just kept saying, "Mineral water, mineral water. She wants the mineral water." Like every 5 seconds, I was some monkey. But yeah, can definitely relate.
Cool. So, guys, been a pleasure as always talking to you about sort of all our experiences with the language and sort of the fluency, accents, and whatever. I think for me, what the takeaway for me is, even though it's Buwan Wika, and it's all about exploring our culture through language and the Filipino language. What we need to remember is our Filipino-ness isn't defined by sort of how well we speak the language. It's just merely one facet of it. Because being a Filipino to me is the language, but it's also family, community, food. So I think that for me, that's one very big takeaway. I don't know if you guys agree. Judging by the nods, I'm assuming you all agree. Cool. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Tambayan. Follow us on all our social medias: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn at FiliFest. This has been Tambayan.
Adios y gracias con ustedes todo. Hasta luego.
Paalam.
Diyos mabulos at marhay na gabi.
Bye.
Diyos mabulos at marhay na gabi.
Okay.
Okay, bougie.
Next.
Where did that come from? Like, yeah, I was raised in an English household, and then you suddenly threw that out.
Selena, your lag is
There
so
was a lag. Sorry, you.
bad.
It's so bad. You guys lag for a good like
still
15
lagging.
seconds.
Is your
I was
Wi-Fi
talking about my
connected to the
bathrobe.
Philippines?
Yeah, it's on brand, innit? No, but
Nawala ang
what do you call it? I
signal.
was talking about.
You're the
I
one
was
that's
talking
lagging.
about my bathrobe.
You're the only one that's
Sorry.
lagging.
Is
You're
it?
the
Are
one
you
that's
using
lagging.
Globe or Smart?
We'll edit that so it's
But
just
I heard
like
everything.
Have the mineral water, please. And for the whole trip, they just kept
Bruh.
saying,
It doesn't make
"Mineral
sense.
Bro.
water,
I don't get
mineral
it.
Say-
water. She wants
Boy.
the mineral water."
Jesus.
Like every 5 seconds.
No, sweetie, what is
Like,